Hello. Let me just okay. Seems like everything's working. Hi, those of you who are here. I know there are not very many. Thank you so much for coming and watching my little promo. I've been working really hard on it all week. Uh, it it's something that it was really hard for me to to actually make that video. For a long time, I couldn't really figure out a direction for it, like what exactly what tone I should take with it, if it should be funny or if I should be, I don't know, like yeah, cracking jokes or making it really epic and like all about LARPing and stuff. And so I eventually, sorry, I need to place the computer down here. I'm sorry for some of the weird things in my workshop in the background. So in the end, I decided that I listened to a bunch of this inspirational speaker called Simon Sinek, and I realized that I really wanted the video to be inspirational. And all of a sudden, like the ideas started pouring out, and now we have, here we have it. So I'm sorry it was a little cheesy. um, I I wanted to be inspirational and motivational, and I wanted to be authentic as well. But you can't really be inspirational, motivational without being a little bit cheesy. So my apologies for that. Yeah, and so another thing about this video is that I had this deep, like profound, like sort of personal realization and all of this when I was listening to these talks by Simon Sinek, where he talks about starting with why and like why your company does what it does and sort of what your company believes in. Obviously, my company is a company of one, but it's still really important, I think. And I have sort of a why for my leather boutique, but I realized that I have kind of a separate why for my Patreon and my leatherworking courses. And that basically is that, like what I said at the beginning of the video, I really value getting to make stuff with your own hands and encouraging people to be doing things themselves and DIY and artisanship and all of that. It's something that's always been really important to me, crafting and doing arts and crafts as a kid and that turning into doing crafts as an adult and kind of eventually becoming an artisan. It's something that I think it's really transformational and really it gives you a lot of sort of self-esteem and power to be able to do that. And so I realized that I really wanted to share this with other people and promote that in the world in general. And the best way to do that personally is to inspire and teach people how to do so. So that's kind of a little bit of the reason why the video is the way it is. I also talk in the video about a little bit about how I wanted to share kind of my teaching style a little bit, but without going too into detail and throwing lots of information at once, because it's supposed to be a promotional video. I guess to sum it up, my teaching style, I'm someone who really needs to understand stuff in order to be able to do it. I can't really deal with just knowing how to do something. I really need to like dive in and know why it works. And so this is something that that's really important to me when I teach, is to, explain to people, not just, oh, show you, oh, this is how you do it. This is how you use this tool. I really want to get into, why, we do the different things that we do in leather crafting, because it kind of lets you play with the rules a little bit. If you really understand the rules, then you can break them. So that's something that's really important for me, and I hope that came across in the video. Yeah, and so a couple other reasons, why I made this video, and what I'm trying to do with my Patreon. A lot of people, because I do these sort of inspirational videos on YouTube that are kind of maybe a tutorial. I don't know. A lot of people are asking me questions about, oh, how do I do leather crafting? Like, oh, can you give me advice about this or that? And I try to help people as much as I can. And I really, I want to help people. But at the same time, it's not that I want to make a profit off of other people. It's just that I can't really justify spending lots of time answering people's questions and, helping them do this stuff. I can't spend a lot of time doing that and making these videos on YouTube, which take hours and hours and hours, not just of filming and then editing and color correction and all this stuff. I can't justify doing all of that for free. I mean, I'm not personally rich enough. I'm not like some millionaire that can just do whatever I want for fun. I only have time to do stuff that makes me a living. And right now, for various reasons, Foxes and Ravens is pretty much, it's my only job right now. It's all I do. So that's, I really gotta push every angle that I can. So I really wish that I could give all this stuff to you guys for free. And maybe one day, when I am rich and famous, I'll get to do this stuff for free. But for now, I really appreciate everyone who signs up for the course and kind of lets me know that my time is worth something. I really appreciate that. And yeah, so I think that about sums up. Sorry, I'm looking down at notes. I actually hand wrote notes for this. That about sums up what I wanted to talk about with the promotional video. If you guys have any comments about it, throw it in the chat. Just keep in mind that you're all watching me, and I don't know what's going on with you. So hit up the chat. Say oh, it was great. Oh, it was kind of cheesy. Whatever. Feel free to drop comments in there. Okay, so the other reason why we are here tonight is because this is in fact the first live Q&A for my patrons. I actually, I did start the Patreon back at the beginning of January. It finally got approved. I wanted to start it in December, but it actually takes a really long time for Patreon to approve your page. So it finally got approved, and I started it, and 2 people just signed up without me even advertising it anywhere. I was so shocked. So thank you so much. Brittany and Erica, you 2 were the first to sign up for my course. And I've already told you that you will always have a special place in my heart. So each of you has submitted a couple of questions. And so I'm going to try to take a little time to answer all of these. They're really fabulous questions. So I guess that I'll start with some from Brittany because they're a little bit more sort of esoteric and just sort of kind of talking about some of the same things that I was just talking about with the promotional video. So first question from Brittany is, what got you started in leatherworking? And it's sort of I don't know, a cheesy, funny story. I feel like I've told it 1,000 times. My mom got me a kit for leather tooling. I had done a little tiny bit of leatherworking for a cosplay one time. I was like, ooh, leather seems so such a fun material. And I'd done a fair amount of making costumes and cosplays and stuff. So I know a lot about sewing and crafting in general and that kind of thing. But I wanted to try this leatherworking thing. I don't know, leather seemed so such a fun material to work with. And so my mom got me a leather tooling kit and showed me just the basics of how how to use a swivel knife, and then you use a beveler to go along the groove, and you create this kind of 2D effect on your leather. And I was just like, whoa, yeah. And I got really into it. And then shortly after that, I joined a Viking reenactment group. And obviously leatherworking is one of the crafts that's kind of that's really present in Viking reenactment. You know, something that obviously was very prevalent at the time. So I continued with my leatherworking for that, and I started making pieces for other people in the group. At one point, I started making gloves, like for combat. And I made those for a while, and then I got into shoemaking, and I was trying to sort of push making shoes for a while, and then I got kind of tired of shoes, but now they're like I don't know, everyone just wants shoes from me. But so yeah, that's a little bit about my leatherworking journey. It was a bit of a happenstance, and it just proved to be an everlasting love, I guess. All right, so Brittany asks next, what's your favorite tool for leatherworking? It's a funny question. My tools are back here. I think that probably one of my favorite tools has got to be this little roller guy. It's got like it's hard to see because my camera is really crap. But it's just like a little roller tool that you can swap out different designs on here. And so you can really easily just make the border of something like look decorative and nice. So this is just, it's not something that I use a lot, but it's something that's really fun. And I just find it really pleasing. So that's probably one of my favorite tools in terms of emotional happiness. There are definitely other tools that I use more often that are probably more like my life-saving tools. But so what Brittany asked, what brought me to my style of leatherworking? And actually this points out something that I wanted to mention before about my Patreon and my leatherworking classes. I decided on this name for my school, the Foxes and Ravens School of Leathercraft and Artistry, which, you know, is a little silly and pretentious, but it's supposed to sound like the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And so, you know, Foxes and Ravens School of Leathercraft, and then I wanted something else, and I was like, and artistry. And so it was sort of a joke at the beginning, but I realized that actually it's something that's quite important to me as well, because I feel like a lot of people who teach a trade skill like this, they'll teach you how to do the stuff, but they don't help you try to, you know, figure out your own style. And it's really hard. I've been through a lot of personal sort of like, you know, reflection and, you know, and interrogation and like trying to figure out, you know, how to develop my own style. And so I hope that I can share a little bit of this process with you guys and kind of help you develop that as well. So in brief, my style has kind of developed because, well, first sort of out of necessity, because I was doing Viking Age reenactment. And so I was copying a lot of these sort of Celtic knotwork and Celtic knotwork and, you know, Viking Age designs. And so I got really good at doing the Celtic knotwork thing and kind of started to be able to kind of invent my own. So I incorporate a lot of that in my work. Hi guys in the chat. Hi Erica, thanks. I'm glad you like the Hogwarts reference. It's, you know, little happy nerd. So my personal style, I really love like Art Nouveau and stuff like this, but honestly, the moment when I realized like that how to make my own style was looking at artists from other fields people who do other kinds of crafts, and realizing like, wow, like those people, like I really love so much what they do. I should stop trying to like imitate these other things that I've had sort of thrust upon me and that I see in leatherworking all the time. I should really stop trying to do that and like go after these looks of stuff that that really inspire me. Not just so it's like so like I don't look at I try not to get inspiration from other leatherworkers almost at all. Like I don't look at other leatherworkers stuff a whole lot. I really focus on what are artists that inspire me outside of that, and like what are elements of their work that I can try to sort of translate into leatherworking. All right, so next question: What do I hope? What do I hope to gain from Patreon? So as I explained a little bit, I have a lot of people who have been asking me questions, and I wanted to give a way for me to be able to, you know, give people advice and also really like dive into a lot of this stuff in the kind of deep, like crunchy way that I that I love and that I kind of want to share. And so the Patreon, I'm hoping, is going to be a way for me to make some really nice, like comprehensive leatherworking courses and videos. I think that there's a lot of people out there who do, you know, who share some leatherworking tricks and tips and techniques and stuff, but like I really want to get into like why this stuff works and you know, and how you can bend those rules. So that's kind of briefly why I want to do the Patreon. And also I just want to have like a connection with people. You know, I really want to be a little closer to my students and you know, and really have that kind of that back and forth. So that's what I'm hoping. What's something you wish you'd been taught or knew before starting leatherworking? I think that I'm trying to think back to like when I was first starting leatherworking, and what I knew then. And I definitely, at the beginning, I didn't know that there was a difference between chrome tan and veg tan. And so I had a couple of experiments that went really bad because I thought that all leather was veg tan. So I don't know, I guess I could say that I wish that, but in a more profound sense, for a long time, I think I was really intimidated by experimenting and getting into projects because leather is so expensive and leatherworking tools are kind of expensive. And so I was sort of afraid, and I wish that I had had someone, you know, tell me to not be afraid. And that you'll have so many scraps that you can do tests on. But just that, you know, that it's okay to make mistakes, basically. And that your early projects, like they're going to be the best that you can do. And you should always try to, you know, to do your best in that moment. But those early projects, I mean, they're a learning process, and it's okay that they're not perfect. And you're basically, not that you're going to throw them away, but like they are mistakes in a certain sense. So you should allow yourself to make mistakes. You know, it's okay. Not every piece that you do has to be perfect. And it's going to be a fun and exciting journey. All right, and last question. What's a step that you would love to skip in leatherworking? The first thing that comes to mind is burnishing edges of leather. Oh, God. Burnishing is when you, after you've rounded the edge of your leather, you then take something like a wooden tool and you sort of smooth out that edge. And it can be quite finicky and very time consuming. And for a long time, I didn't do it at all because I was like, this is dumb. I don't need to do this for my leather to look good. I don't want plastic looking edges. Like, I was very anti-burnishing for a long time. Now I do it for pretty much all of my pieces. I've learned to like it a little bit more. And there's a lot of, things about it that now that I know, I'm less irritated by it. Little sort of tricks and sort of understanding what's happening when you're doing the burnishing. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now that I understand it, like, I guess it's not so bad. Especially for pieces that you wear, like anything that's touching your body, you don't want scratchy, like gritty edges. Like, you want nice smooth edges to be touching you. So now that I do a lot of like clothing pieces, it's very obvious to me why burnishing is very important. But that's definitely a step that I would love to skip. All right, so that was Brittany's questions. Unless she's probably here. Yes, I see that you're here, Brittany. Hi. If you have anything else, drop it in the chat. But I'm gonna start on some of Erica's questions. There's just a couple of them, and they're a little bit more straightforward. So Erica asks, what kind of acrylic paint should we use for leather? Should we get, a special for leather acrylic paint sold at places like the Tandy, or can we use regular acrylic paint? And she also asked if, when we are using acrylic paint on leather, are we supposed to dilute it? Like, how does that work? So I personally just use regular acrylics that you can get at an art store. I actually have this box here is like my paint box. And my parents got me a bunch of paint to paint canvas shoes, because back when I was 18 years old, I thought that I was going to have an Etsy store painting canvas shoes. That didn't work out, but I had the paints with me for a long time. And so I'll get to the question in the chat in just a sec. But so I just have these regular acrylic paints, and I tried using them out on leather. It seemed to work. And then later I went to a class at the Tandy where we sort of, it was like a free class about dyes and paints and stuff. And what the guy there told me was that acrylic paint that you can buy for leather is the same as an acrylic paint that you buy for canvas. It's just that the pigment is super concentrated. So it's a little bit more like it's like expensive paint for walls. When you paint, if you buy fancy paint, you only need to paint one coat of it. And whereas if you buy cheap paint, you have to paint a couple coats. So that's the basic difference. Usually I don't use a ton of acrylic paint, so it's fine for me that I have to paint several coats on. And so basically, if you have regular acrylic paint that you're painting on your leather, you have to do several coats, basically, in order to get a nice, bright, poppy color. So in terms of diluting and stuff, I mean, yes, you technically can dilute it. And I sometimes do that with like, when I was doing this corset that had some flowers on it and stuff, I was sort of trying out diluting the paint to get a little bit more of this sort of watercolor effect. And it works a little bit. The problem with leather is that it's not like, it's much more absorbent than canvas. And so it's gonna like suck all of that water, and you're gonna get a very different look than if you're gonna be using the paints on canvas. Yeah, so I expect that the for leather paint is like maybe a little thicker in consistency. I don't actually know. It's something that I will consider for the course and for my students to possibly buy myself and test it out so that we'll know. So that's to do with paint. You also, with acrylic paint, need to make sure to put on, well, need to. It's best if you can put on some kind of like sealant, like an acrylic sealer, which basically is just clear acrylic. So it's just like a clear plastic that you put over the paint to try to protect it a little bit from being chipped away. Because once the paint is dry on the leather, a little bit of it might kind of like soak in and bind with the leather, but it's pretty easy for it to get chipped and for the paint to scratch off. Because it's just on the surface. It doesn't really like go down into the leather. And we're going to talk about this in the class in the video lesson on paints and dyes and all of that. So yeah. All right, so next question. How deep should the swivel knife go? For those of you who maybe don't know what a swivel knife is, you've probably seen it before. This is a swivel knife. Mine, as Erica noted before, I put a lot of these little leather covers on my stuff because it kind of hurts your muscles to have to squeeze small things. So I try to put leather covers on things so that it's larger and my muscles don't cramp up as much. But so a swivel knife, it has this little knife down here, and you're using it to cut a groove into your leather. And so how deep should it go? Basically, there's sort of two parts to what a swivel knife is doing. Well, I mean, Brittany, you could have bought the leather acrylic, and then we would have known. Maybe it is super fabulous. Someday, I'll have to buy the acrylics for leather so that we can really definitively know what is the difference. But I used regular acrylic paint, and so you have my permission to do so. So a swivel knife. So the main purpose of a swivel knife, you don't need a swivel knife to do leather tooling at all. I've seen stuff with and without swivel knife, and it's hard to tell the difference. And that's because the effect of the 2D effect of leather tool designs really comes from the beveler. And so the main purpose, I think, for the swivel knife is to guide your beveler along the path, the line that you want it to be on. And so basically the answer is it should go deep enough that you can guide your beveler along it. I would say that probably less than 1 millimeter is how deep my swivel knife goes. It's also a question of, for the sake of comfort, sometimes going deeper with the knife makes it harder to turn curves and stuff. So going too deep is definitely, you don't want to go more than 1 millimeter in with your swivel knife, is the short answer. I guess that if you did go deeper than that, you could possibly get more of a sort of 2D pop effect. And there are some techniques involved in when you're doing more Sheridan style tooling. For those of you who don't know, Sheridan was a sort of pioneer, I guess, of leather designs for saddles. And so those designs that have like flowers with like ferns going around them, and it's a lot of sort of weaving ferns and flowers and stuff together. That's like the Sheridan style. And it's spelled here. I will put it in the chat. This is Sheridan, like that. So Sheridan style, I know that there are some techniques. I haven't learned a ton about them because I'm not super interested in Sheridan style because everybody does it. But I know that there are some techniques where you want to get under the leather and that place where you cut your line. You want to get like under it and like pull it up. So you might need to go a bit deeper with your swivel knife if you want to do those kinds of techniques. But besides that, yeah, I think that, yeah, so it's not necessary to go that deep with your swivel knife is the short answer. TLDR. Okay. Last question. Oh, right. And someone asked in the chat if I have an online store. I do have an online store. It is just foxesandravens.com. Simple. Patreon is patreon.com/foxesandravens. The YouTube is youtube.com/foxesandravens. I've got that stuff nailed down. So yeah, okay. Erica's last question is, what are some things to look for when buying leather? This is a very big topic, and I'm going to talk about a lot of that stuff in depth in the video lesson on leather, which we will be doing in the next couple months, probably. So to tackle just like a small portion of this question for the live, like when I'm shopping for leather, what I look for, at the Tandy in particular, they don't price their leather like individually by the hide. They just have like, okay, for this type of leather, it's always $100. So the first thing that I do is I go through and I find the biggest one. But you can't just find the biggest one because, you know, as we know, size doesn't matter. You want to make sure that you have the leather that has the most usable space on it. And a lot of leather has cows that have to get branded when they're, you know, in a herd of cattle. The farmers, like, they have to put brands on their cattle. So a lot of times those marks, I mean, it's on the skin, and the leather is the cow's skin. So so those brands will be on pretty much any piece of leather. And if they're not there, then it's because you just happen to not get a part of the leather that doesn't have them. Yes. So look for the brands, look to see if they're like really out in the middle or if they're kind of close to the edge and you could just kind of like cut around them. Look for any other, like, roll out the leather, see if it has any holes or marks in it. There's almost always like a little bit of a scar here or like a hole where like the leather tanning machines like scrape too close to the edge. There's usually some kind of deformities on your leather. And so you want to make sure when it's in the roll, you'll glance at it and you'll be like, oh, it looks beautiful, it looks fine. And then later you open it up and you're like, oh my God, there's like a giant hole in the middle. You can get that sometimes. So look at the size, the size of the leather, look for those imperfections. It's not 100% always this, but I find that leather that has become discolored, and what I mean is like it's kind of become kind of yellow in color, or like kind of like almost like a saddle tan, like almost like this color, that leather is going to be a lot tougher and a lot harder to work with. So I tend to go with leather that, is more light colored. Like most of my pieces, are like, this nice creamy color. So that can be something to look for if you're shopping for Vegetan. Yeah, and I also it depends on if you're getting into buying like economy leather versus like higher end leather. If you're looking through economy leather, just try to get a sense of if the thickness of the leather is really uniform throughout or if it's really variable. Not that you necessarily don't want variation, it's just that you have to be aware of that, because if you buy something, if you see a roll of it and you're just like, oh, I'll take this, and you run away with it, and then later you realize, oh my gosh, only half of this leather piece is the thickness that I want, and the other half is like way thinner. That's no good. So just be aware that most leather pieces, there's a lot of variation in the thickness, and the more cheaper it is, the more variation there's going to be. So I think that is a good answer to that question of what to look for when buying leather. Um, what ounce do I usually work with? It looks rather thick, asked Brittany. And how do my hands handle all that cutting? So I actually I've now built up sort of an inventory of a couple different thicknesses of leather that I like to work with for different kinds of projects. For stuff that's like for like a corset, or like for bracers, like sort of armor, or like, like stuff that you're wearing on your body. I found that I like 7 to 8 ounce leather. I like it to be a little bit thicker, feel a little bit tougher. And because if it starts to get down into the like, it's very, very hard, I found, to find 5 to 6 ounce leather or 6 to 7 ounce leather. It almost doesn't exist at all. Like whenever I shop for leather, I don't know why, it's almost always 3 or 4 ounce or 7 or 8 ounce. So it's hard to find stuff that's in the middle there. So maybe I would like stuff in the middle more. But 7 to 8 ounce is actually like it works great for a lot of stuff. For purses and bags and stuff, things that, or like for like a leather journal cover or something. I find that 3 to 4 ounce is a nice thickness. 2 to 3 ounce starts to get really thin. And honestly, under 3 to 4 ounce, you can't really do tooling very effectively on it. I mean, you can carve the lines into the leather, but you can't really get this like 2D pop effect because it's just so thin. So 3 to 4 ounces is sort of like the minimum for me personally for tooling. Yeah, for really tooling designs. But 2 to 3 ounce is good. At that point, you're basically in a range where most like soft, most milled leather is going to be like, honestly, a lot of milled leather is like 3 to 4 ounce. But once you're getting that thin, you're talking more about like soft leather that you're going to use for garments and stuff like that. So I don't work with a lot of that stuff. I do a little bit, but not often. Yeah, usually I'm sort of in the 7 to 8 or 3 to 4. And for cutting, I would say that keep your knives sharp. This is something that I learned. Took me 5 years to learn this lesson. It wasn't until about the last year or so that I realized how important it is for your knives to always be sharp. I mean, if you don't want to really tire yourself out with like having to cut, like put a lot of pressure when you cut. Because I was poor, I was sort of like, oh, I gotta keep using this knife. But I realized, that the $3 for a pack of X-Acto knives was so much more worth it than the like grueling cutting experience that I was having. So if you have a hard time with cutting the leather, make sure that your knife is super sharp. Also make sure that your leather isn't old. Old leather is hard to work with and hard to cut. The yellowing, that yellow leather look, not a good sign. And it's gonna be tough. Erica says, I tried cutting once and went out the next day to buy a new blade. Yeah. And especially for thick leather, when I cut shoe soles, I actually have a pair of shoe soles right there. When you're going, and the shoe soles Tandy used to carry in the north where I live. I think I've heard that they still have it in the south somewhere, which kind of pisses me off because I want it, I need it. They used to have a 10 to 11 ounce Craftsman or oak leaf veg tan, which oak leaf is just like, it's pretty soft and pliable. It's this, it's this color that's more like this beige cream color. It's very soft. It's very easy to work with. And they used to have that in 10 to 11 ounce. And like, that was perfect for shoe soles. It was amazing, but I can't get my hands on it anymore. So now I use 9 to 10 ounce. But yeah, when you're cutting that stuff, it dulls your blades like nobody's business. Good, Brittany. You're going to go out and buy yourself some new knives. Treat yourself. Great. All right. Well, we've been here for about 45 minutes now. Are there any last minute questions that I can help you guys with? I kind of wanted to cut off in an hour, so that leaves us another 15 minutes. So, it's okay. It's just that then I have to continue talking about things until someone asks a question. Otherwise, we can kind of end scene for tonight. What do you ladies think? There might be a bit of a lag. Also, hello, Henri Gajiev. Thanks for the little fox emoji. All right, well, trying to decide if I should just blab and talk about something. Talk about my dogs. Actually, well, I can talk a little bit about my dog Freyr, who's named after the Norse. It's named after the Norse god. Because I got Freyr at the same time that I started leatherworking. So Freyr and I have been together for about 6 years now. And I've been doing leathercraft for about 6 years now, as I said in the video. And we did a lot of, Freyr and I actually lived in this little hobbit trailer. Thank you. I can't quite read what your screen name is because I think that it's in Cyrillic. But thank you very much. I do want to make more videos. Like I said, I need to kind of have the justification to make more videos, which means that I need, I don't know, some kind of payment. So the thing with YouTube is that now I'm monetized on YouTube, which is great, but none of my videos are really like hitting it off and going viral, which means that I don't make very much money. I mean, I think that I just recently went over the threshold of 100 Canadian dollars after being monetized for about 6 months. So that gives you an idea of what, a little tiny YouTuber like me makes from YouTube. There's not big bucks in it. I think that the most that most YouTubers make is like, I mean, once you become bigger, you make like, I don't know, $2 per 1,000 views maximum. Usually it's more like $1 per 1,000 views of your video. So, even if you have a video that gets, whatever, 50,000 views, you'd only make $50 on that video. And, if you have 200,000 views, you only make $200. Like it's really not a lot. Oh, that's a great question, Erica. How long after I started did I start selling stuff? I guess I technically was sort of, I don't know. I think that at the beginning I did sell my things in my first year of leather crafting, but it was to friends and they were just sort of trying to encourage me. And it was for like, pennies, basically. It was sort of like pity money. So I would say that I wouldn't have really considered myself like a professional leather crafter until I started making gloves for combat. And that also, I said in the video that I'm completely self-taught. It's a little bit of a lie, but I had to simplify it for the video. I did have a little bit of training from my ex, actually, who taught me. I mean, he didn't really teach me a lot of techniques, but we made a lot of leather stuff together. And so there were like little things here and there that he showed me, like the infamous, like how to sew the needle back through the thread. That was a trick that he showed me. And yeah, some of the stuff about like, how to use waxed thread and stuff like that. But yeah, so he had kind of a business selling these gloves. And so I sort of joined him and we made these gloves together to sell. And those were like high priced, very valuable items. And so that was kind of, I think that was like at least 2 years into doing leather crafting before I was like really selling high quality stuff. And then after that, after I stopped selling stuff with him, it took at least another year before I was able to kind of find my own niche or kind of get on my own feet. So probably like 3 years in, I was like selling my stuff instead of selling someone else's stuff. But yeah. So kind of going back to dogs and stuff, and also sort of my personal leatherworking journey. There was a period where I was living in a tiny house. I was living in a teardrop trailer, and I was traveling around the country with my dog, and I actually had all of my leatherworking stuff with me in the trailer. And I was like making shoes, these Viking turn shoes out of my trailer for like a year and a half or something. It was kind of off and on. I would like go on a big trip and, I'd come back home, and I was living with my parents at the time. And so I'd live with them for, like a month or two, and then I'd go off again. And, but I always had my leatherworking stuff with me and was always working on leatherworking projects in the trailer with my dog. So that's all really tied together for me and like very special to me. Brittany asks, what's something that seems easy to cut out, but is actually a useful or crucial step? Oh, like what's a step that you think that you could skip, but you can't? If you want, okay, like lots of different things are popping in my head. Personally, for me, beveling, and sorry, I mean, like edge beveling. So with a tool like this, where you're going along the edge so that you have like kind of a rounded edge. When I learned how to do that, that was like a sort of level unlocked. I was like, oh my gosh, my leather work looks so professional now that I do this. Because when you cut out, a lot of times you'll make little errors. There will be little like, I don't know, either a little nick in it from the blade, or like the cut won't be perfectly straight. And when you bevel, it kind of magically erases all of your mistakes from cutting out. So beveling your edges is definitely a step that I would not skip for any project. You have to make sure that your beveler is the right size, but that's definitely a step that I would not skip. Anything else? Yeah, I think that's a good answer to that question. There's a lot of other steps that like, that it kind of depends on how you want to tackle your leatherworking project. And so, when you know what the different things do and what the different ways of doing the same thing are, you might be able to skip something if you're kind of doing it a different way. Like, for instance, like I made this bag a few months ago that I wanted to have this leaf on it. And usually when I do leaf stuff, I use dye and not acrylic paint. So I use like, leather dye for leather. And so I was starting to make the bag, and I wanted to dye the part of that was the leaf one color and dye the rest of the bag a darker brown color. I wanted the leaf to be like an orange color. And I accidentally like dyed the whole thing brown. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh crap, why did I do that? Because I wanted the leaf to be orange and now I can't make it orange because it's brown. And so, that would have been a crucial step to like make sure to not dye the leaf brown. And, but I got around it by instead painting it with an acrylic paint. And so I made my leaf orange using paint instead of using dye. So yeah, there's a lot of steps that you can play with. What time is it? It is 7:55 now where I am. So we're pretty much getting to the point where we should probably be wrapping up. Thank you so much to I've seen that, we went up to 11 people and now we're at 10, and that's just like so cool and special. If you liked this talk and you're like, maybe I could learn something, just so you have a little bit of a better idea of what it's like if you're actually a patron. So Brittany and Erica can tell you that I have that Patreon has this sort of stories feature now called Lens. And so for the $3 patrons, I'm always going to be posting like little videos every day where I'm just sort of talking about like what I'm working on. And I usually like to throw in little tips here and there about like, oh, if you're doing this step, remember, not to do this, or, oh, if you're doing this step, try to do it this way or something. So I actually do give quite a lot of information, even to the people at the $3 tier. It's just that those stories disappear after 24 hours. But it's a format that's really easy for me to share. So, I like doing it and I like sharing a lot through that. For the people, we haven't actually done this yet, but I do plan on then taking all of those stories, putting them together in a little sort of week summary video that will then be available in the archive for everyone at the $15 tier. So the $15 tier, what they get to do is vote on one video lesson per month and vote on a video tutorial for that month. And my plan is actually for the tutorials to be published to YouTube later, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure for creators, especially because I'm sort of a part-time YouTuber. There's a lot of pressure for people to be putting free information on YouTube. And so I'm like, okay, YouTube, if that's really what you need, I'll try to find something that, that I can justify giving to YouTube for free. So there's going to be a video lesson that's sort of diving deep into like all about leather, all about leather dye, all about leather tools. And then we're going to sort of develop on that, like how, basics of tooling, what sort of intermediate level tooling, how to combine this and that. So those are the video lessons, and those are going to be exclusive for the $15 and obviously the $75 tier. And then the tutorials, the people who are at the $15 tier get to vote on what thing we should learn how to do, like what we should do for the tutorial video. And they will get a free download of the pattern that is used in the tutorial, so that, they get to have the pattern, they get to follow the tutorial, is included. And then that tutorial is going to go on YouTube, and so that when people buy the pattern from the shop, they kind of get the tutorial that goes with it. So that's the $15 tier. And then also, of course, $15 tier gets like, they get to submit questions before we do the lives. Anyone who's signed up as a patron gets to come to the lives. From now on, this live was sort of like, I wanted it to be open because there's not a lot of people on the Patreon right now. And I wanted to talk about the promo video, but from now on, the lives are going to be only for patrons, but the $3 tier is included in that. So if you're a $3 tier person, you can come to the live and with your questions, and you can throw them in the chat. And if I've answered the questions of the the sort of the journeyman tier, the $15 tier first, and I have time, then I'll happily answer your questions. And then the $75 tier, I made it so high because a lot of people were like really pressuring me, like, oh, if you're giving them an hour of your time and it shouldn't cost any less than like 70 or like $100 an hour. And I'm like, whoa, that seems like a lot. So I made it 75. I know it's a lot, but it is, it's a one-on-one private lesson. I'll really dive into, what project you want to work on. And I'm also offering to make like a pattern for you. So if you're like, oh, like I really want to do this leather armor project, but I don't know how to do a pauldron or whatever, I'll make the pauldron pattern for you, send it to you, and then we'll, in our lesson, go through how to do it, like all the steps. I'll go as detailed as I can. So those are the different Patreon tiers, and I hope that some of you think that it's cool and want to sign up. It's not a lot, it's $3 a month, and it really helps me out. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much, Erica and Brittany, my awesome first students. And I hope you all feel inspired and have a great weekend. All right. Thank you so much. Stay foxy, my friends.